On the top floor of Donovan Enterprises, the lights remained on even as the clock neared midnight. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense, almost suffocating, with only the sound of flipping pages and keyboard clicks breaking the silence. Isla Bennett, 24, sat neatly in the corner of the room, her notebook and pen always ready. Her brown eyes tracked every detail of the meeting, ensuring not a single thing was missed. Despite the exhaustion of a long day, she refused to show any signs of fatigue. As a secretary, her duty was to always be prepared to assist her boss, Grayson Donovan, the CEO of the corporation. Isla wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads with dazzling beauty, but she had a unique charm, delicate features, bright, intelligent eyes, and a simple yet well-groomed appearance. She always dressed neatly in a white blouse and pencil skirt, her long hair tied back. Unlike many others at the company, she didn't come from a privileged background or an elite university. Isla grew up in a poor neighborhood where every dollar was earned through sweat and perseverance. She understood the value of hard work and never allowed herself to slack off. Though she had worked as Grayson's secretary for nearly a year, Isla had never felt at ease around him. Grayson Donovan, a 32-year-old man, wealthy, powerful, and quite possibly the coldest person she had ever encountered. He possessed everything an ordinary person could only dream of: a billion-dollar corporation, expensive sports cars, and a reputation as a business genius. But what made people fear him wasn't just his success, it was his indifferent attitude and arrogant demeanor. He always walked into a room in impeccably tailored suits, his sharp gray eyes and chiseled face devoid of emotion. To his employees, he was nothing more than a tireless machine, never offering praise, never wasting words. To Grayson, Isla was just another employee, an insignificant secretary among hundreds. Isla didn't dislike Grayson because he was strict, but because he lacked compassion. He had no hesitation firing someone over a missed deadline, never once considering their circumstances. People respected him, but they also feared him. As for Isla, she simply did her job well, never expecting anything from her cold-hearted boss. The meeting dragged on for over 3 hours, finally ending with a successful outcome. Donovan Enterprises had secured a multi-million-dollar contract. Grayson stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and scanned the room. "The meeting is over. Everyone may leave." His deep voice carried authority, devoid of excitement, even after sealing such a major deal. Isla quickly gathered her documents. Just as she was about to step out, his cold voice called from behind. "Miss Bennett." She flinched and turned. "Yes, sir." He glanced at his watch before meeting her gaze with his usual emotionless expression. "Send me the meeting report before morning." Isla bit her lip, hiding her exhaustion. "I'll send it as soon as it's done, sir." Grayson gave a curt nod and walked away without another word. Isla sighed, finishing up her notes. Another long night. Outside the building, the wind howled, carrying the crisp chill of late autumn. Grayson strode toward the private parking lot where his sleek Aston Martin awaited him. Loosening his tie, he felt a rare moment of relief after the long day. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and sped down the highway. The city at night was quiet, skyscrapers glowing softly against the dark sky. But to Grayson, the view meant nothing. His mind remained occupied with contracts, numbers, and expansion plans. There was no room for anything else. Ever since his father had passed away, Grayson had thrown himself into work. He didn't believe in emotions, kindness, or love. The world ran on power, not on weak sentiments. Lost in thought, he barely noticed the blinding headlights rushing toward him. A massive truck, out of control, was barreling straight at him. His instincts kicked in. He swerved hard, but it was too late. A deafening crash echoed into the night. His car flung off the road, smashing into the steel guardrail. The airbags deployed instantly, but the impact was brutal. His head slammed into the windshield. Warm blood trickled down his face. His vision blurred. Pain surged through his body. Screeching tires and blaring horns filled the air. Grayson tried to stay conscious, but everything faded to black. A thin mist blanketed the London night, the dim streetlights casting a yellowish glow on the damp pavement. A chilly breeze carried the crisp scent of autumn. Isla Bennett tightened her thin coat around her shoulders as she hurried through the quiet streets. Another late night at work, just like countless others before it. She was exhausted, but she never complained. This job meant everything to her, a chance to escape poverty and build a better life. She couldn't afford to be lazy or waste time. Just as she raised her hand to hail a taxi, a loud explosion shattered the silence. The sound of metal colliding with terrifying force followed almost instantly. Her heart clenched. An accident? Looking ahead, she saw a bright, flickering glow in the distance just beyond the highway. Smoke billowed into the night sky, mingling with small bursts of flames. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Without hesitation, Isla ran toward the chaos. A sleek black sports car had crashed violently into the steel barrier. The front end was completely wrecked. The windshield was shattered and oil leaked onto the road, mixing with streaks of blood. Inside the driver's seat, a man was slumped over the steering wheel, a crimson stream trailing down his forehead. Isla's breath caught in her throat. Grayson Donovan. No, it couldn't be. For a moment, she froze. The powerful, untouchable CEO she had always seen as invincible now lay vulnerable and broken. Panic surged through her, but instinct quickly took over. She couldn't just stand there. Isla rushed forward, her hands trembling as she grabbed the car door. It was stuck. She bit her lip and yanked harder, but it wouldn't budge. Flames had begun creeping from the engine, the sharp scent of gasoline thick in the air. Her eyes darted around, searching for anything. Then she spotted it, a large rock near the roadside. Without a second thought, she grabbed it and smashed it against the window. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the glass shattered. She took a deep breath and reached inside, careful to avoid the jagged edges. "Mr. Donovan," she called desperately, "can you hear me?" No response. His breathing was shallow. There was no time to wait. Reaching in, she managed to unlock the door from the inside and yanked it open. Isla climbed halfway into the car, quickly unbuckling his seatbelt. She slipped her arms under his shoulders, struggling to pull him out. He was heavier than she had expected, and his limp body nearly collapsed onto her. But she gritted her teeth and dragged him away from the wreckage. 1 step. 2 steps. 5 meters. Then, boom. Car exploded behind her. Flames shot high into the sky, and the force of the blast knocked her backward. Instinctively, she clutched Grayson close, shielding him as they hit the ground. A second later, she gasped for air, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. If she had been even a few seconds later... She didn't dare finish the thought. Looking down at the unconscious man in her arms, she saw his face, pale with blood still seeping from his wound. Quickly, she pulled off her coat and pressed it against his forehead to stop the bleeding. "Please, wake up," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her hands were drenched in blood, but she didn't stop applying pressure. She looked around for help, but the road was eerily deserted. No cars. No people. No time to waste. With shaking fingers, she grabbed her phone, blood smearing the screen as she dialed emergency services. "There's been an accident," she cried. "Please hurry." 10 minutes later, the wail of an ambulance pierced the silence. Paramedics rushed out, carrying a stretcher. Isla stepped back to let them work, but her heart continued to pound. "Low blood pressure," one of the nurses said. "He's lost a lot of blood. We need to move now." Isla watched as they carefully placed Grayson onto the stretcher. Just as they were about to load him into the ambulance, a nurse turned to her. "Are you a relative?" Isla opened her mouth to say no, but when she looked down at her blood-stained hands, the words wouldn't come. "Do you want to ride with him?" She hesitated, but then nodded softly. The ambulance doors slammed shut. They sped off into the night. The hospital was bathed in sterile white light. Rushed footsteps echoed through the halls as gurneys rolled across the floor and doctors shouted urgent orders. Isla sat silently in the waiting area just outside the emergency room, her hands still trembling. She had never experienced anything this terrifying before. The doors suddenly swung open and a doctor stepped out, scanning the room. "Who brought the patient in?" "I did," Isla said, springing to her feet. "How is he?" she asked, barely able to breathe. The doctor gave a small nod. "The patient suffered a severe head injury and significant blood loss. But thanks to your quick action in stopping the bleeding, he made it just in time. A little later, and he might not have survived." Isla let out a shaky breath of relief. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. "He's alive." The doctor gave a small smile. "Yes. You did well." Are you a family member? He asked. Isla shook her head. I'm just a colleague. The doctor nodded again. Then you're free to go. We'll notify his family. Isla glanced toward the recovery room where Grayson lay unconscious. Should she leave? Her mind told her yes, her job was done. But something deep inside her refused to walk away. And so she sat back down and waited. Through the night, the steady beeping of a heart monitor filled the quiet hospital room. Soft moonlight filtered through the white curtains, casting faint streaks of silver across the floor. Grayson Donovan slowly opened his eyes. Took him several seconds to register where he was, staring up at a stark white ceiling with a sharp pain throbbing from his forehead down to his temples. The faint scent of antiseptic hung in the air. Hospital. His last memory before everything went black. An empty road. Headlights. A truck. The crash. Then nothing. He blinked, then tried to lift his arm, but his body felt heavy and sore. What the hell happened to me? He murmured. Just then, the door opened with a soft creak. Mr. Donovan. A sharply dressed man rushed in, his face tense with worry, until relief flooded his expression. You're awake, thank God. Grayson recognized him instantly. Julian? Julian West, his trusted assistant. Yes, sir, Julian said quickly, pulling a chair close to the bed. You were in an accident. Your car was totaled on the highway. If someone hadn't pulled you out, he trailed off, shaking his head. I don't think you would have made it. Grayson's eyes narrowed. I was saved? Julian nodded. You were unconscious, bleeding heavily. But someone broke the car window, pulled you out, and stayed with you until the ambulance arrived. Each word felt like a pin piercing Grayson's mind. Someone had risked their life for him. Had pulled him out of a wreck. Had waited through the night. Where is she now? He asked. Julian hesitated. She left. Grayson frowned. What do you mean, left? She stayed all night to make sure you were okay, Julian explained. But this morning, after the doctor confirmed you were out of danger, she quietly left. Didn't say a word. A strange feeling stirred in Grayson's chest. She didn't leave any information? Julian shook his head. No. If I hadn't asked the nurses, I wouldn't have even known she was here. Grayson stared at him. Then, who was it? Julian looked uncomfortable for a moment, then finally said, It was Isla Bennett, your secretary. Grayson froze. Isla? That quiet girl who always sat in the corner of the room, taking notes and never saying much? The same woman he had barely paid attention to? Her image flickered in his mind, diligent, punctual, never seeking praise, always working silently in the background. And she had saved his life. Something inside Grayson shifted. All his life, people surrounded him for power, for money, for influence. Business partners wanted deals. Employees wanted promotions. Women wanted his wealth. But Isla? She asked for nothing. Called no press. Made no demand for recognition. Didn't even wait for a thank you. For the first time in his life, Grayson felt seen. And not because of his success, but because someone had cared for him as a human being. Julian watched him carefully. Sir, he said softly, I think you should find her. Grayson clenched the bedsheet in his fist. A strange, deep emotion was rising in him. This wasn't just gratitude. It was something much deeper. He met Julian's gaze and said firmly, I want to know where she is. Julian nodded. I'll look into it right away. Grayson leaned back against the pillows and closed his eyes. He had made his decision. He wouldn't let Isla disappear just like that. He would find her and show her his gratitude in a way she would never forget. Isla Bennett walked into Donovan Enterprises just like any other day, but something felt different. A strange unease had settled in her chest the moment she arrived. Whispers floated through the office halls. Colleagues were murmuring, sneaking glances at her. And then she heard it. The CEO had summoned her to his office. She frowned. What could he possibly want now? As a secretary, Isla was used to Grayson Donovan completely ignoring her existence. He was always too busy, too distant, too important to concern himself with someone like her. If he ever called her in, it was only for document signatures or brief work-related orders. But today, something was off. She stepped into the elevator, tightening her grip on the stack of files in her hands. Her heart pounded. She didn't want to admit it, but part of her was nervous. Did he know? The elevator doors opened. The office was quiet. She stepped in. Grayson Donovan was waiting behind his massive desk, dressed in another flawless suit. But this time, when he looked at her, his eyes weren't cold or detached. They were softer, warmer. "Sit down," he said, his voice low and steady. Isla hesitated but obeyed, settling into the chair across from him, her hands folded in her lap. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he just looked at her, really looked at her, as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. Finally, he broke the silence. "Do you know," he began, voice controlled, "that when I woke up in the hospital, I found out who saved me?" Isla stiffened, her hands tightening. So he did know. She offered a polite smile, trying to play it down. "I'm just glad you're okay. I just happened to pass by." "No," Grayson interrupted sharply. "Don't say it was just a coincidence." Isla looked up, startled. "You could have walked away. You could have called for help and left me there. But you didn't," he said firmly. "You risked your life to pull me out." She remained silent, unsure what to say. Why had he called her here, to thank her? Then came something completely unexpected. "I want to repay you," he said. "And I want to marry you." Silence. Isla froze, stunned, unable to process what she'd just heard. "What did you just say?" she asked slowly, certain she had misheard him. "I want to marry you," Grayson repeated, every word calm, deliberate, and unmistakably serious. Isla stared at him. No, this couldn't be real. Grayson Donovan, one of the most powerful, cold, emotionally detached CEOs in the country, was proposing to her? She let out a nervous laugh. "If this is your way of saying thanks, a check would be more than enough." "No," he said again, cutting her off. "I've never let anyone into my life before. But you saved me. I can't just let you walk away." His gaze was locked on hers, unwavering. Isla's heart pounded. "Mr. Donovan, this is impossible. We're completely different. I'm just an employee and you." She gestured toward him, toward his world. "You're untouchable. From a world far beyond mine." "The difference doesn't matter to me," he said, voice firm. "You're saying this because of the accident. You're still in shock." "You don't mean it," she insisted, standing up, eager to end the conversation. But before she could take a step, Grayson stood too. He reached out and gently caught her wrist. His touch was warm. Steady. Real. "I'm serious, Isla," he said quietly. "I never make decisions I'm unsure of, and I don't act on impulse." Her hands trembled. Her mind was spinning. She wanted to believe him, but everything about this was too surreal. "You don't understand," she whispered. "We come from two different worlds." Grayson didn't flinch. He looked straight into her eyes and with a steady voice said, "Then I'll close the distance." His words stole her breath. She stood there frozen, unsure of what to feel, confusion, fear, disbelief, and something else she didn't want to name. Why was he being so persistent? Why her? And why did part of her want to believe him? Isla had thought that after that strange conversation, Grayson would come to his senses and let go of this insane idea. She had expected him to return to his old self, the cold, untouchable CEO. But she was wrong. He didn't give up. From that moment on, Grayson Donovan became someone else entirely. No longer just the ruthless businessman obsessed with contracts and high-stake negotiations. His focus had shifted to someone entirely different, Isla Bennett. He was everywhere. When she arrived at work, he was already there. When she stopped by the cafe near the office, he had already ordered her favorite drink. When she finished for the day and walked outside, his car was waiting at the curb. Isla was bewildered. Grayson Donovan was pursuing her. And the entire company knew. Overnight, she went from being the quiet secretary in the corner to the subject of hushed whispers and curious stares. Her colleagues watched her every move. Some were envious. Others confused. A few even cruel in their comments. But none of that mattered to Grayson. He was undeterred. At first, Isla didn't know how to handle it. She tried to ignore it, tried to stay distant. But something about his approach was different. He wasn't pushy. He wasn't arrogant. He was just present. Quietly, sincerely present. And gradually, she started to feel the sincerity behind his every action. He didn't just talk. He proved himself. One evening, Isla came home to devastating news. Her mother had been admitted to the hospital for emergency heart treatment. Costs were overwhelming, far more than she could ever afford. But when she reached the hospital, she was told the entire bill had already been paid in full. She didn't need to ask who had done it. She knew. The next morning, she marched straight into Grayson's office. "You paid for it," she said, not asking, but stating. Grayson looked up from his desk. "I did." "Why?" Her voice wavered. "You can't buy my decision. If you're trying to force me into something, buy." "I'm not," he interrupted gently. "I don't want you to marry me out of gratitude. I just wanted to help because I care about you." His words shook her. And yet she was still afraid. Afraid that this was all temporary. Afraid that he would change his mind. Afraid that she was starting to feel something too. Love was never part of Isla's plan. Especially not love with a man like him. She told herself to be careful. To set boundaries. But day by day, Grayson broke down her walls. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet, genuine effort. He never forced her. Never brought up the accident. Never used his wealth or gratitude as leverage. He respected her space. But he never stopped loving her either. Even in the moments she doubted him, even when she tried to push him away, he stayed. And slowly, Isla began to trust him. She began to believe that maybe, just maybe, his feelings were real. Till it wasn't easy. There were trials. Misunderstandings. Long nights of uncertainty. There were moments when Isla questioned everything. His intentions, his persistence, his sincerity. Times she wondered if he only felt obligated because she had saved him. But time was the truest test. And over time she saw him clearly. Grayson Donovan didn't love her because she pulled him out of a burning car. He loved her because of who she was. Because she never asked for anything. Because she didn't treat him like a CEO. Because she was honest, kind, and real in a world full of masks and motives. And one day, Isla could no longer deny it. She loved him too. One afternoon, Grayson received a message from Isla that made his heart skip a beat. "Can we talk?" Without hesitation, he got into his car and drove to meet her. When he arrived, Isla was already there, waiting. She stood near the fountain in a quiet garden behind the office building, her hands clasped together, her posture unusually still. The moment she saw him, she took a deep breath. There was something different in her eyes. Something calm. Something certain. Grayson approached slowly, careful not to rush her. "You wanted to talk?" Isla looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I say yes." He blinked, confused. "Yes to what?" She smiled, a soft, nervous, beautiful smile. "Marrying you." For a moment, Grayson simply stared, as if unsure whether he'd heard her correctly. Then a rare smile spread across his face. Not his usual polite smirk or corporate expression, but something real. Something filled with joy. Their wedding sent shockwaves through the business world. The media buzzed. Headlines ran wild. Speculation swirled. No one could believe it. Grayson Donovan, the powerful, untouchable CEO, had married his secretary. A woman from a humble background with no elite connections or prestigious pedigree. People whispered. Some mocked. Others judged. But none of it mattered to Grayson. Standing before the cameras with Isla's hand in his, he made it clear. "She is not just the woman who saved me. She is the woman I love most in this world." The wedding ceremony was elegant yet intimate. There was no extravagance, no flashy celebrity guests, just close friends, a few family members, and quiet vows exchanged under a cascade of white roses. Isla wore a simple, flowing gown. Grayson, in his signature black suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. And when he kissed her, the world seemed to disappear. In that moment, there was only them. After the wedding, their life together was not without challenges. Adjusting to a shared world wasn't easy. Grayson had spent years in solitude, building empires and avoiding emotions. Isla was still adapting to a life where wealth was no longer a limitation. Their personalities clashed. Their habits were different. Their worlds had once been light years apart. They weren't perfect, but they were perfect for each other. And most importantly, they never forgot what had brought them together, not just the accident but the moment she chose to stay, even when she could have walked away. One night, months after their marriage, Grayson returned home late from a board meeting. He found Isla sitting in their garden, barefoot, sipping tea under the stars. He sat beside her in silence. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then Isla said quietly, "Do you ever wonder how different things would be if that night hadn't happened?" Grayson looked at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he said, "I wouldn't be alive." She turned to him. "But more than that," he continued, "I wouldn't have known what it means to be truly loved, or what it means to love someone back without fear." Isla's eyes shimmered in the moonlight. "I was hollow before you," he said. "That night, it didn't just save my life. You saved me." Tears welled up in her eyes. Grayson reached for her hand. "I'm not good with words," he murmured. "But I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life proving what you mean to me." She leaned her head against his shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, both of them felt something rare. Peace. As weeks turned into months, Isla and Grayson's life slowly found a rhythm. It wasn't the lavish, flashy existence the tabloids loved to imagine. Instead, it was quiet breakfasts in the kitchen, evening walks after long workdays, arguments over trivial things, laughter over burnt toast, and the gentle comfort of knowing someone was always there. Isla had never imagined herself in a world like this. Surrounded by wealth, yes, but more than that, surrounded by love. Real, honest, sometimes messy, but always sincere love. She never asked Grayson for anything. Yet he gave her everything. Not just gifts or luxuries, but his time, his effort, his presence. He didn't try to change her. And she never tried to become someone she wasn't. Their differences, once so vast, became bridges they crossed together. Of course, not everyone was supportive. There were colleagues who still whispered behind Isla's back. Investors who raised eyebrows at Grayson's choice in a life partner. Friends who questioned whether it was love or guilt. But Grayson never let doubt linger. Anytime someone questioned Isla's place by his side, he made his stance clear, publicly and privately. "She's not here because of what she did," he told one board member bluntly. "She's here because of who she is." One evening at a charity gala, a renowned businesswoman leaned close to Isla and smiled politely. "You're very lucky," she said, "to have married someone like Grayson." Isla smiled gently. "I think we're both lucky." And that was the truth. Because Isla hadn't just saved a life that night. She had opened a heart. One that had been buried under years of ambition and solitude. And Grayson hadn't just given her a new life. He had shown her that love didn't require wealth, status, or a perfect past. It only needed honesty, trust, and the courage to choose each other every day. Years later, on their anniversary, Grayson surprised Isla with a small gift box. Inside, it was the jagged piece of glass from the night of the accident, carefully cleaned, framed, and engraved with the words. For the moment, everything changed. Isla stared at it, overwhelmed. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "You kept this?" Grayson nodded. "That night, it was the worst and best thing that ever happened to me." She blinked away tears. "Without it," he said, "I would have never found you." They embraced, quietly, with no need for more words. And in that moment, they both knew this love, born from chaos and fear, had become the most meaningful thing in their lives. Not a fairy tale. Not perfect. But real. Genuine. And theirs. Sparkling Heart, thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more meaningful stories.